take a look at this mess. All that cleanup. It's been exactly 1 year since we got hit by a powerful windstorm, millions of dollars of damage.
But tonight, our investigators found out that state money to help rebuild is only going to a few select towns. News 10 NBC's chief investigative reporter Berkeley Brean tracked down the towns getting the money and those that aren't. Burke?
Right, first of all, it's been 12 months and not a single penny not a single town has received a single penny for the windstorm. But we found out some towns didn't even know the state money was there in the first place. The windstorm ripped through Monroe County like a hurricane. 1 month later, the Lake Ontario floods. By July, the governor signed this bill unlocking millions of dollars for flood relief. But look at what the News 10 NBC investigative team found deep inside the bill. I read it to Gate Supervisor Mark Cassini.
This is the bill that was passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. And it says that municipalities affected by the windstorm are eligible to apply for a grant under this subdivision. Did you know about this?
Absolutely not.
Supervisor Rossini says the town of Gates suffered $255,000 in damage.
Nobody who knew about this told you about it?
This piece of information, this bill, was never communicated to me, and I've spoken to several of my colleagues. They knew nothing about it.
That's because the grant application in the bill never existed. But some towns like Irondequoit and Greece knew about it because they say they were told about the money. Now both are in line to get hundreds of thousands in storm aid.
How did you know about getting this sort of aid for wind damage?
Well, we didn't really know. We just reached out to our state representatives and said, you know, is there any type of assistance? You know, we're dealing with quite a bit.
Supervisor Bill Rylick says he was alerted to the aid by Greece Assemblyman Peter Lawrence and Irondequoit Assemblyman Joe Morelli. Greece never filled out a grant application for the money because the application never existed.
So you made calls to your assembly members and they told you this money's
Well, they said they'd see what they could do, and then some point down the road we received a call saying we're able to secure some funding to help reimburse you for some of those costs.
By the way, Greece had almost $1 million in damage. They think they're going to get about $325,000 from the state to pay for that windstorm. So if this is the law, why is the law not being followed so that some towns are getting money and some aren't? That's the question we're going to try to answer in a story coming up new at 6. Berkeley Brean, News 10 NBC.
Thank you, Burke.
News 10 NBC is digging into why some towns in Monroe County are getting help to pay for windstorm damage and some are not.
The storm hit 1 year ago today. The state has millions of dollars available for repairs, but until News 10 NBC chief investigative reporter Berkeley Brean uncovered the source of the money today, most towns didn't know it even existed. Burke?
Brett, investigative producer Mike Lawson and I spent all day working on this story. The governor signed a bill last July saying the windstorm money is available as long as towns apply for the grant. But we learned today that grant application never existed. And so most towns and Monroe County didn't know the money existed.
Well, this is the definition of confusion.
When the windstorm ripped through Monroe County last year, it caused $255,000 in damage in the town of Gates. In the summer, Governor Cuomo signed this law, unlocking millions in storm aid through a grant.
Did you know about this?
Absolutely not.
The storm caused Monroe County more than $300,000.
Did you ever get an application to apply for this money?
No, at no time did we receive an application.
Anybody let you know that the money was available?
No, no one from the state had contacted us.
Some towns knew, like Greece and Irondequoit, two of the hardest hit by the storm. But Greece Supervisor Bill Rylick told me he didn't know about the money until he was told by Greece Assemblyman Peter Lawrence and Irondequoit Assemblyman Joe Morelli.
So you made calls to your assembly members and they told you this money's
Well,
available?
they said they'd see what they could do, and then some point down the road we received a call saying we're able to secure some funding to help reimburse you for some of those costs.
The law says the money is available in a grant through the agency called Empire State Development. But News 10 NBC learned there is no grant application, and the money is actually getting spent through Assemblyman Morelli's office. In a statement, Morelli said today, "I was proud to secure $2 million in state funding that would provide critical relief to the many towns in our community that sustained severe damage. Since that time, my office has been working diligently and deliberatively to ensure these funds are distributed in the most effective and appropriate manner possible."
This is a complete cluster. and somebody really needs to explain why this process happened the way it did. But the good news is, and I want to give credit to your team here at News 10 NBC, we may end up getting some money now that this has been exposed. And to me, that's the bottom line. I want to get some money for my residents to reimburse for the expenses that were incurred in fighting this windstorm.
In his statement, Assemblyman Morelli said that he worked with the governor's budget office to get money to the towns hardest hit. And the statement also says that in the days to come, he wants to work with other towns that also got hit. But the law says there should have been a grant process where all towns could apply at the same time. Berkeley, Brean, News 10 NBC.
News 10 NBC is exposing how New York State did not follow a law that would get money to towns hit by last year's windstorm. As we first reported last night, the law signed by the governor says there was supposed to be a grant application to get the money. That never happened. And so, as News 10 NBC Chief Investigative Reporter Berkeley Brean found out, a lot of towns didn't even know the money was available until we told them. Burke?
Brett, because the grant system never got set up, Assemblyman Joe Morelli got $2 million from the State Assembly for windstorm damage. But because the application process now goes through his office, we found out some towns got contacted and some did not. Morelli says the windstorm money came up when the state was talking about Lake Ontario flood money.
So I, along with my colleagues in the Assembly, have been reaching out to supervisors, talking to them, and essentially asking them to submit to us what the costs are that were directly as a result of the windstorm.
Two things. First, the law says there should have been a grant application through the State Office of Empire State Development. Second, not every town knew about the money. Based on the phone calls to each town supervisor, News 10 NBC learned that Greece, Irondequoit, Webster, Penfield, and Henrietta were told about the windstorm money, but Chili, Ogden, Gates, Parma, and Monroe County were not.
Greece knew about this, Irondequoit knew about it, Webster, but Monroe County didn't know about the money.
Well, Monroe County's not eligible.
Gates didn't know about the money?
Yeah, Monroe County's not eligible. It's only for towns.
Monroe County got flood relief money from the state, $1.5 million.
I think this process has raised significant concern.
Jesse Sleezer is the county spokesman.
The question is, why did a single assemblyman in the state legislature who represents this area end up having the sole discretion over how these very important dollars were distributed? These were dollars that were intended to offset costs that were ultimately borne by local taxpayers, and they end up getting doled out like pork.
How would you respond to a charge like that?
Well, I would say this, that I saw a need, and I guess I'm not necessarily concerned about what people want to call it. It is an appropriation which I secured, and so that's it, and we're distributing the money according to that.
Gates Supervisor Mark Cassini just tweeted this, quote, grateful to receive a call late this p.m. from Joe Morelli offering to help Gates recoup losses from the March 2017 windstorm. Looking forward to working together on this. Thanks at News 10 NBC for bringing us together on this issue. The storm cost Gates $255,000. It cost the town of Greece close to $1 million, and Greece is in line to get $325,000 in state aid through Morelli's office. Berkeley, Brean, News 10 NBC.